What's up, people? Welcome to another edition of the Black and Gold Hour podcast. Took a couple of weeks off just to take a little break, but we back at it. And today I have a very, very, very special guest to the show. Honestly, I've been watching this show for about 2 or 3 years. I remember being at work watching this show, listening to him. He's getting me prepped for the Sunday's game. I remember late last spring, I was watching this show. And honestly, he inspired me to kind of do my own spin on Saints news and Saints action from the perspective of fans who know football. So today, I'm happy to say that I have host of the State of the Saints podcast, TJAY Jones, man. How are you today, man?
Hey, Merv, how you doing, man? Hey, I got to say, the host of the State of the Saints podcast, man. Appreciate you for having me, man. I really do appreciate this.
Man. Thank you for coming on, man. And I see you grinding and you laying the foundation for, people like myself, man. I watch you every single day, man. I'm just happy that you took time out of your day just to come on, man. Appreciate that, man. Man,
it's no problem, man. Anytime a person like yourself grinding, working hard, I mean, I can attest to that, man. I mean, I've built like a foundation, but I'm still building, and that's what it's all about. It's about networking, communicating together. And, I'm proud of everything that you're building here. I see the aggression, I see the grind that you're doing here. So the sky's the limit for you, man. And I appreciate you for having me.
Thank you. But, let's get to it. We're here to talk Saints football. And over the last 4 years, we've had a lot of highs and lows, but I want to start off how I like to start off with all my guests. Can you tell me, how you became a fan of the Saints and what inspired you to start the State of the Saints podcast?
Well, I became a Saints fan because of my grandmother. My grandmother, who has been a Saints fan since the expansion of the team back in '67. My grandmother is a diehard Saints fan. I mean, you go to her house right now, she has a whole New Orleans Saints shrine on the wall, of different like newspaper articles from them winning a Super Bowl, from Drew Brees autographs, just stuff like that. My grandmother, is one of those individuals who would leave church, a little bit early to check out the end of the Saints game. My grandfather was a minister, and he didn't like that very much, but that's what was instilled inside of me, man. Sitting down, watching New Orleans Saints football during the time when I was a kid. Most of their games were blacked out. So I used to have to listen on WWL down in New Orleans with Jim Henderson, who was the play-by-play guy. And that's one of the main reasons I got into broadcasting, man. That's one of the main reasons why on top of podcasting, I work for 90.9 FM out here in Hemingway, South Carolina. So that was one of the reasons why. And also with the State of the Saints podcast, I mean, it started back in 2018. I just started the job at the radio station. I just moved to South Carolina. And, I had like different access to the radio station. The station manager allowed me to record anytime I felt like it because I live like literally around the corner. Right. And I remember week one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the New Orleans Saints. And Ryan Fitzpatrick was the quarterback, and he lit the Saints up for like almost 400 yards. And the Saints lost that game inside the Superdome week one. And I can just remember like being so frustrated that I went around the corner and I recorded it. And I wasn't going to put it out, man. I wasn't going to put it out, but I played it back and, I just started to laugh at myself a little bit. I'm like, man, it's a little entertaining. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, and when I put it out, I got such a positive response. And I was so passionate about the team. I'm like, I can do this every week. So that was the reason why. So the reason why I'm doing the State of the Saints podcast is Ryan Fitzpatrick. So whenever I make it big, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm definitely going to be asking him to come on the show because Ryan Fitzpatrick is the reason why the State of the Saints podcast exists.
Right. And that was the most frustrating game. I think it was like 80 points scored almost or something like that, if not over 80 points scored. So
horrible.
It was, man. But we kind of have like the same kind of, well, you grew up down there, but I grew up in Virginia. My dad is from New Orleans and met my mom through the military. But over the summers, I would go down there and hang out with my cousins in New Orleans. So every summer until I turned about maybe 15 or 16 when I was old enough to start working, I'm down in New Orleans. So my whole family's still there and everything. So, it was just no choice but for me to be a Saints fan. I talked to my uncle, and I watch you on your show, and you talk about. My uncle says, you a Saints fan, if you wanted a Saints ticket about 30 years ago, you can go pick one up off the ground. You can go pick one up off the ground. He's like, because I started watching football when Drew Brees and Reggie Bush came, 2006, when I was like 10 or 11, when I was old enough to understand sports.
Right.
And, I'm lucky. My uncle laughs all the time. He like, you just don't understand, how easy it was to get Saints tickets and you know. And my dad had a Saints starter jacket, and he was like, man, you was not wearing that unless you was a real fan. Yeah,
that's true, man. Like, growing up in New Orleans, like I grew up in the 90s when they weren't very good. And most starter jackets were the Cowboys starter jackets, 49ers starter jackets. That's what most people wore. And you wore a Saints jacket down there, starter jacket down in New Orleans, people would laugh at you. And they have this joke that they said, one person seen 2 Saints tickets on a seat. They bust the glass and put 4, and then they had 4 Saints tickets on the seat. So, I mean, it was pretty bad, man. Nobody really was, really repping hard for the Saints. I mean, you had diehard fans, but man, the tickets were pretty much easy to come by because, I mean, it was just a tough pill to swallow. They weren't very good. So you really had to be a fan in order for you to root for the black and gold.
Right. And my father, like whenever I'm with him, we're in Virginia or Maryland, and we seeing all these Saints fans, my dad's just like, you would have never seen this 20 years ago. You would have never seen this. But the last 15 years have been great. We've had Drew Brees, Sean Payton, and we know the changes they've brought to the organization. But now it's a new era. And after these last 4 disappointing years, I mean, I felt like every year we were a contender over the last 4 years in some shape or form. And it's a new era approaching, and we went into the draft with a lot of expectations. I mean, some of us were going for corner, some of us were talking linebacker, some of us were talking wide receiver. And I want to ask you, the Saints picked up Peyton Turner, Paulson Adebo, Ian Book, Landon Young, and Kawan Baker. Out of those draft picks, I mean, who do you think Saints fans should be most excited about?
I think you should be excited about all of them because what the past has taught us that the New Orleans Saints know what they're doing, despite the fact of how frustrated we as Saints fans are on draft day. I mean, none of us were too particularly happy, and we didn't understand why they decided to get a pass rusher in the first round. It was a head scratcher. Every Saints podcaster, every broadcaster, anybody that covered the Saints scout team, from Nick Underhill to my guy Ross Jackson. I mean, everybody expected the New Orleans Saints to draft a cornerback in the first round. Even Sean Payton at the golf tournament that they had said that corner was a must. And when Peyton Turner came along, people were like, what the heck's going on with that? Right. And of course, on draft night, you're so amped up about probably getting a cornerback that didn't happen. But I think you should be excited about all these guys because the Saints do a really good job, and they do their due diligence when it comes to scouting these guys and getting the best players and the best, character guys inside of the locker room. I think a lot of the decisions that the Saints make are based on the toxic locker room they had between, I want to say, about 2013 to 2016. When you had people like Akeem Hicks that was there, you had other guys inside of the locker room, and it just wasn't a happy place to be. But you see the Saints now, the locker room is guys that really genuinely care about each other. They hang out with each other. They play for one another. And I just think that the Saints just wanted to add those type of guys to the locker room. When you look at somebody like Peyton Turner, I mean, he has good upside. It seems like that's what the Saints like, those big, tall, rangy defensive ends. You look at somebody like Pete Warner, a sideline linebacker, a guy that started out in the mail room at Ohio State, worked his way up, down up the depth chart. And so many of these other guys, like the linebacker, Taylor, and so many guys like Kawan Baker, all these guys I can see being a good fit for the New Orleans Saints. So I don't have one particular guy. I think that all of these guys can be a factor when I'm looking at this team because where they were selected in the positions that they are. I mean, it's a lot of competition, and I can see all of these guys hitting the field in the first year.
Right. And I like how you mentioned Pete Werner. When I watched his highlight tape, when I seen him last season, one thing that kind of struck out for me that I liked about him was he was fundamental. And fundamentals are lacking in the NFL. If you a fan and you watch it, you know that fundamentals can waver at times, especially tackling ability, especially keeping your eyes, having your eyes in the backfield, turning your head around, just certain things like that tend to go, awry when you're in the NFL. But he has those fundamentals. I think he can develop in this offseason and this upcoming season to be a good role player for the New Orleans Saints over the next couple of years. So I'm excited to see him personally. But I like how you mentioned the locker room. And we already know how Drew Brees was in the locker room, the presence that he brought, DeMario Davis as well. But now that Drew Brees is gone, and we don't want to go back to those 2013 to 2015 years where things were kind of all over the place, who do you think can step up as a leader in the locker room for the Saints?
Well, let me backtrack before I answer that question. Something you said about P. Warner. A lot of people, Merv, they look at the players that you have on the team and they compare them to other guys. Like they'll look at somebody like like a Luke Kuechly, no longer in the league. They'll look at somebody, like a sideline linebacker, and they'll compare that player to a player that's on your team. Everybody is not going to be a Bobby Wagner. Everybody is not going to be a Luke Kuechly. Everybody is not going to be one of those guys, but there's still a place for those guys on the team. When you look at P. Warner, you mentioned it. I mean, the guy is solid, and when you have a solid guy on the team, a guy's going to make that tackle. A guy's going to deflect that football. He's not going to miss too many tackles. He's going to be exactly where you want him to be. That's a recipe for success. And I just think that sometimes we have to stop looking at what the other teams have and have an appreciation for a player that's fundamentally sound, because we find ourselves wanting these players that's larger than life and that can do all these different things. Like a cornerback, right? Everybody wants Jalen Ramsey, but everybody can't be Jalen Ramsey. It's okay for you to be a solid cornerback and, and make sure that you deflect passes more times than not. But to answer your question about the locker room when it comes to leadership, DeMario Davis, that was somebody that has come into the Saints organization a couple of years ago, and he has become that leader. I mean, you can see like the little seeds being planted over the last couple of years. And Merv, we had a fortunate situation. I mean, it wasn't fortunate, but it was fortunate in a certain way. Drew Brees went down for 9 games over the last 2 years. And with that, we had to see other guys step up into leadership roles. We had to see guys rise to the occasion. And that's one of the main reasons why we're so optimistic as Saints fans, because we see that, okay, DeMario Davis was in the circle when Drew Brees wasn't around. He was the one that was, bringing the team together in a huddle. We seen the defense stepping up, when Drew Brees was out. We seen players doing their thing. So when you have that type of leadership, not only is DeMario Davis and guys like Malcolm Jenkins leader inside the locker room, I mean, they're NFL leaders. I mean, these guys are like borderline NFL Man of the Year candidates every single year. So not only are these guys demanding respect in the locker room, but in the community as well, and as well as their peers around the National Football League. So the Saints, when it comes to leadership, man, they couldn't have picked 2 better guys, to be able to help them through this process, this transition without Drew Brees.
Right. And over the last few years, you've seen the Saints kind of have that leadership outside of Drew Brees, for lack of a better word. They had that swagger, especially 2018 with Mark Ingram and all of that. Like we had a good locker room. Locker room still vibing as far as last season as well. So I'm excited to see what happens as far as leadership goes. But in order for the Saints to sustain any kind of success, it has to be at least quality quarterback play. So I want to go back to last season and first ask you, what was your opinion when Taysom Hill got the start over Jameis Winston, and how do you feel about the quarterback competition heading into this upcoming season?
Well, when Taysom Hill got the start, I kind of understood it, especially when I heard Sean Payton talk about he told Taysom that he would give him an opportunity. I mean, that was kind of one of the things that he discussed during his contract negotiation. So Sean told him if Drew goes down, he was going to give him the nod. I mean, despite what the media tried to spin it to be, that's what it was. It wasn't the fact that Taysom was better than Jameis and Jameis ain't ready and all that kind of stuff there. But as far as Taysom on the field, I think there was some room for improvement. He did some good things. I mean, he completed about 70% of his passes. He had a couple good games against the Falcons. He had a couple of down games when it came to Philadelphia and also the Denver game. He could have played a little bit better.
Right.
And some of his decision making was a little bit questionable. But, all these things to me can be corrected if he was to be a starter. I mean, I think that he can get better as a decision maker. I think that a lot of the games that Taysom had, he was a little bit nervous. And when you are the backup for a legendary quarterback and you're seeing that legendary quarterback making all the throws and not making mistakes, I mean, in the back of your mind, I don't care how confident you are in your abilities, it's going to affect you. And, I just think that he did a okay job, for a guy that, never had any starting experience in the National Football League. But as far as his quarterback competition is concerned, I'm a Jameis Winston guy. I think that Jameis Winston is going to be the starter for the New Orleans Saints. I think that he has all the tools to be successful. I think that Jameis Winston has never been in an environment like this as a professional where a team doesn't just have to rely solely on him to lead them to the promised land. There are so many different players on this team that can complement Jameis, and Jameis doesn't have to worry about being a savior. This is honestly, Murph, this is the first time in Jameis Winston's life as a quarterback that he doesn't have to be the savior. I mean, when he was in Bessemer, Alabama, he was the savior of his high school team. When he got to Florida State, he was supposed to bring legitimacy back to Florida State. Tampa Bay was the first pick overall. He was supposed to be the savior of the franchise. Now you go to a team, all you have to do is just play quarterback to the best of your ability. You ain't got to make a mountain out of a molehill. You just got to go out there and perform. And if he does that, then I think he'll be just fine. But I'm a Jameis Winston guy. I think he's going to become the starter over Taysom.
Okay, so just to follow up to that question, because last season, I'm not going to lie, when Taysom got to start, I was a little excited. Not because I believe Taysom is better than Jameis, like you were saying. It's because he was the unknown. It's
right.
like, man, we know what Jameis can do. We watched him. He was an NFC South. He was in the division.
Right.
Taysom, I felt a little excited. I smiled a little bit. I was like, cool. Let's see what he can do, because everything we had seen was good from Taysom. We had never seen Taysom have a bad play, maybe one or two, couple fumbles. But other than that, we've seen him, and what he's shown us, he's definitely able to tear apart the Falcons, but we weren't able to see that consistency over, the stretch that he played. Right. So now going with Jameis, I want to ask you, do you think Jameis is the long-term option for the Saints, or just something, just a quarterback to get us through this season and hopefully, sustain success for the Saints?
Man, it's funny that you asked me this question, because I was thinking about this before we did this interview. Jameis Winston is a very peculiar situation. You know what I'm saying? The Jameis Winston situation, because Jameis Winston, if Jameis Winston goes on to be an NFL Hall of Famer, you wouldn't be surprised. If Jameis Winston ends up just being a borderline bust, you wouldn't be surprised. This guy falls in to any category. This dude can easily be in league MVP this year. He can easily be on his way out. I mean, it's crazy, but do I think he's the long-term solution? Yes, I do. I really honestly believe that. I think that Jameis Winston is coming to a situation that is tailor-made for his strengths. One thing about Sean Payton, I don't care who's on the team. It frustrates us as fans sometimes, but Sean Payton will never put a player in a position that he's uncomfortable with, ever. You think about this. Think about all the Saints teams you've seen in the past. I talk about this on the State of Saints podcast. You look at somebody like Devery Henderson. Devery Henderson had, top end speed, right? Most of the plays that he ran was streak routes, deep posts down the field. You know what I'm saying? Robin Meacham, he was a guy that, that can stretch the field. I mean, most of his plays were streak routes and wide receiver screens and stuff like that. He always put guys in positions that made them comfortable. And you even seen it with Teddy Bridgewater when he was starting. Sean went to Teddy Bridgewater and said, "Hey, look, what plays are you comfortable with?" And he formed an offensive game plan around his strengths. And when he first started, he wanted to run the offense like when Drew was there. Right. But after that Cowboy game, that's when he was like, man, I'm going to open up the playbook. And that's when you start to see Teddy Bridgewater perform better, seeing him throw those 4 touchdowns against Tampa Bay. That is what I see when it comes to Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, along with Sean Payton, I think Sean Payton is going to change the way that people think about Jameis Winston, because he's going to help him by doing things that, you know, that cater to the strengths of Jameis Winston. So I do think he's a long-term solution. As long as Jameis Winston stays focused, as long as he just keeps his eyes on the prize, so to speak, I think he is the long-term solution. And I think that a lot of Saints fans that are questioning him and all that kind of stuff, I think that all that stuff going to get put to bed over the next couple of years, because I do think that he's going to be the successor to Drew Brees.
Right. And it's funny you talk about the different variables with Jameis. You could get MVP, or you could get, hey, this is it.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because last week I have a friend who does sports cards. He texted me. He said, Merv, I know you know the Saints, man. I got a Jameis Winston card that is going for $3,500 right now. And he saw a Baker one that was $30,000. And he was like, should I invest in it? And I sat there for like, I ain't respond to the message for like an hour. I was like, ooh, it's really 50-50. Like, it's so many different variables with Jameis. Man. I told him to go ahead and take that risk because I believe in Jameis. And like you said, I believe that Sean Payton is going to put him in the best position to succeed. And I'm excited to see what he does. He has the workhorse, Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray, who honestly, I think it shouldn't even be about Jameis. It should be the Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray show all season. Nobody has been able to stop it, especially when Latavius is balling. But we know how Sean Payton is. He likes to throw that ball, and we have some playmakers. But let's talk about the wide receiver group. So the wide receiver group, depending on where you stand as a Saints fan, and we're both on Twitter, we see the Saints fans differing opinions. We see some who feel like this group is solid. As long as you got Mike Thomas, is solid. There are others who feel like this should have been more of a priority in the offseason. I want to ask you, TJ, how do you feel about the Saints wide receiver group?
I like it. You know, I like it. It takes me back to when you said that you start to appreciate the New Orleans Saints back in, 2006. I mean, look, everybody loves names, right? I mean, we love the guys with names, guys that have proven themselves to be, big time players, right? That's why I like when we look around the room and we see a bunch of guys that haven't proven themselves, we get a little bit nervous. But we want to bring somebody in that we recognize that has had success. But that doesn't always, that's not always the case. I think about, like, nobody knew who Marcus Colston was. Like, nobody knew who Lance Moore was. Nobody knew who, if you like LSU from Louisiana, Devin Henderson was, or Robert Meacham. Nobody knew who these guys were. Like, these guys basically made you fall in love with them by their production on the field. This is what this team reminds me of. When you look at guys like a Traquan Smith, when you look at guys like a Michael Thomas, you look at guys like Deontay Harris, Quan Baker, Marquez Callaway, you look at guys like this, none of these guys, for the exception of Michael Thomas, have really proven themselves to elevate their game. And I like it. And you know who else should like it? Saints fans. Right. Because if Traquan Smith goes out there and he balls out, right, and he's running all these different routes, other teams aren't going to be expecting that. They're not, because they haven't seen him play at that particular level, maybe for the exception of that big-time game we went over 100 yards against Philadelphia.
Right.
Or if you look at somebody like Deontay Harris, yes, he's a good special teams guy, and in between, you might see him do one or two plays, but what happens when he's in the game for the entire time? So I think you should be excited about this young wide receiver core. I feel, that nothing's wrong with it. How can you decide what you need if you haven't seen it on the field? Like, we just, Saints fans are just speculating right now to me. That's the way I feel. I like this wide receiver group. They're young, they're hungry, they have great abilities. I've seen each one of these guys step up in certain moments. Why wouldn't you be surprised? Marquez Callaway, when Michael Thomas was out and the wide receiver group was like completely depleted, he went out there and he almost went for 100 yards, and he would have if he ain't hurt his ankle in that game against Detroit. You look at somebody like Deontay Harris, dude almost single-handedly took over the game in the divisional round, right? Yeah. You look at somebody like Traquan Smith, has stepped up in big moments when Michael Thomas was out. So why in the world would you expect any of these guys, to not be able to perform in a new offense, when it comes to the quarterback position? I like it. I don't think anything's wrong with it. I don't think that we need to go out here and find anybody. And I think Sean Payton feels that way too, because if he didn't, we would have had somebody in the locker room right now.
Right. And I like how you mentioned Deontay Harris, you mentioned Marquez Callaway, and Deontay Harris, like you said, he almost single-handedly, blew out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the divisional round by himself.
Yes.
We had a phantom call that I'm still looking for to this day on a return.
Yeah.
And he was getting plays on the offense. That was pretty much, if not his most productive game on the offensive end as a Saint. He was all over the place, making people miss. And every time he touched the ball, you felt like he was going to take it to the house. And I'm excited to see what he does next season with Jameis, because Jameis can make all the throws that Drew Brees might have been limited to later in his career.
Exactly.
So I want to kind of ask you about a different position group.
Mm-hmm.
And if not more than wide receiver and linebacker, it was the cornerback position. Mm-hmm. Now, we know about the situation with Marshawn Lattimore. And I want to ask you, with the release of Janoris Jenkins, the Saints did re-sign PJ Williams, but what do the Saints do at the cornerback position?
Once again, that's one of those positions that I feel like is going to be one of those training camp competitions, that we're all going to be looking at. I feel like Paulson Adebo is going to be that guy. I think that Paulson Adebo, even though he was drafted in the 3rd round, should have been a 1st round pick if the Pac-12 probably would have made a decision a little bit earlier. He would have decided not to sit out. I think that he was one of those guys who, because he sat out, it kind of affected his draft stock. Guy could easily have been a 1st round draft pick. Saints got a 1st round draft pick in the 3rd round. So I feel like he could be the guy. PJ Williams, definitely don't want to see him on the outside at all. I like PJ a lot, but he does better in the nickel and at the safety position. I think that's what's going to keep him in the league, him playing safety. I do think that the Saints are going to end up, signing a free agent cornerback, probably a veteran guy. When training camp starts, that's when I feel like, you're going to see some of these guys that on outside looking in, guys like Richard Sherman, those type of guys, KJ Wright, linebacker. That's when you're going to see those guys sign, because if they sign right now, they probably would be losing a little bit of money. Those guys kind of wait to see what training camp does, and guys get hurt, and things happen, so they can be able to leverage themselves better. So I do feel like the Saints are going to sign another veteran corner. That's what I would do. I think Richard Sherman would be a good fit for the New Orleans Saints, because I think that he would be another leader inside of the locker room, number one. I think that he can be a good mentor. I think he comes in with cachet. Guys will respect the fact that, this guy's been to the Super Bowl 3 times, multi-time All-Pro, borderline Hall of Famer, probably is a Hall of Famer. Right. So I think that it will help guys like Adebo. It will help guys like Lattimore, step their game up, especially like him being in the locker room and all that he's done. So I expect the Saints to sign a veteran corner. But I'm interested to see what these other guys can do, like Bryce Mitchell out of Tennessee, Keith Washington the second, what I'm saying? Like guys like that, I'm looking to see what these guys actually can do, in training camp, because I think the Saints have a lot of talented young cornerbacks, and I think that some of these guys are going to see the field.
Right. And without a full offseason last year, you didn't get to see the full development of these players. Right. But going into this year, we see what Paulson Adebo has done as far as on the collegiate level, catching one-handed interceptions, converted wide receivers. So he has the hands. Yep. And I'm excited to see what he does. He's athletic. And we know Dennis Allen likes athletic secondary players, and that's kind of the trend that the league is going to anyway. So I'm excited to see, what he does. But to wrap up the show, we talk about the retirement of Drew Brees, and it's been a great 15 years. I want to ask you, what is your favorite Drew Brees moment over the last 15 years?
My favorite Drew Brees moment? I would have to say, you got so many, like the guy brought the city a Super Bowl, but if I can say my best Drew Brees moment, it'd probably have to be that game against the Washington then Redskins. Like in the last 5 minutes of the game, they came back and won that football game. Drew Brees was out there balling out, those last 5 minutes to bring the team back. That's probably one of my favorite Drew Brees moments right there. And also, I mean, look, the Drew Brees spinoff, you know what I'm saying, on the Atlanta Falcons, that's probably another. But I mean, Drew Brees is giving us like so many amazing moments. I mean, it's kind of hard to just pick one. Drew Brees is definitely the greatest New Orleans Saint of all time. We're definitely going to miss him. I know I'm going to miss him. But I mean, he has a good life outside of football. He's going to be working for NBC. Looking forward to seeing him call some games and also on Football Night in America, man. So I want to thank Drew Brees for everything he's done and the respect and credibility he's brought to the Saints franchise. And I mean, there's only one number 9.
Yeah. And I've asked this question like the last 2 weeks. I was thinking about the spinoff, and I've actually had some Drew Brees performances that were actually in losses that were some of my favorite performances. His second half against the Vikings in the Minnesota Miracle game. I just felt like his second half, oh man, if they would have won that game, that would have probably been my favorite game, second half as far as Drew Brees goes. I think about the spinoff. I think about, as a whole, one of my favorite games was the late touchdown from Drew Brees and Michael Thomas against the Steelers. I think in 2018.
Oh yeah,
that game, I lost my voice. I'm watching it from the house, like, man. And then the fumble, and that was it. That was one of the greatest. My favorite. Most. I was so nervous during that game. I don't know why. Maybe it was because we were about to clinch that playoff spot and do what we needed to do as far as the playoffs go.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to thank you for coming on the show today, man. I want to thank you for taking time to talk Saints football. If you haven't been here before, this is the moment on the show where I kind of give some encouragement and tips. And I'm going to use TJ Jones as an analogy. Sometimes in life when we have a vision, whether it be like a career vision or physical health vision or a mental, spiritual vision, we have to create a routine. We have to be consistent in everything that we do. In order, consistency brings results. I mean, consistency leads to you seeing your vision much clearer. Sometimes when we don't have routine, we don't have a pattern set in place to keep us on top of things, we can get easily frazzled or stressed, and we kind of lose focus on what we're reaching for. So in order to keep that focus, be like TJ Jones, he's working. I see him posting videos all the time, and we see where his podcast has went and the success that he's had. And he is somebody that is an inspiration for me and many others. So just remember, for the Mer Speak segment, anything that you want, build that consistency, that routine, that focus, and keep a good circle around you, and everything will be okay. But thank you, TJ Jones, for coming on the show today, man. I really appreciate it, man. I can't wait. Hopefully you come back during the season so we can talk more Saints football. But thank you for your time. Everybody stay safe. Be blessed. Peace.